place.
Do you do lollies?
I love lollies, yeah.
Do you go for like the Ribena ones in the tube?
I prefer a strawberry Calippo if you can find it. They don't do them in the UK.
A Calippo?
Oh, are you kidding me?
That's also a lolly in a tube,
it's
isn't it?
the lolly in the tube,
yeah. I wasn't really allowed those when I was a kid. Yeah.
What's wrong with those?
James, we've talked about my sugar.
Right,
yeah.
but on a Magnum is also
well,
filled with sugar.
Absolutely, but there's something a bit more substantial about a dairy-based sugar.
Like a sweet tea.
There isn't logic to it, really, but like I think there is just. If you were to tier them of like the real hard what's bad for you stuff, it's like
I might check with
the
your mum. I'm
lollies-
like, can George have a Solero? She's like, no, give him a Solero.
So I did something fun and film related the other day.
Oh, yeah?
It's a new one for me. So I moved to a new area at the beginning of the year, and it's it's out of London, sort of a quieter
I had
town.
a lovely little housewarming over the weekend.
Yes, I did. Yes, sorry, James.
Follow out
came.
George Pundek for the... Well, it'll be gone now.
Have you got a story?
Yeah.
I felt like a story was more appropriate,
Yeah,
Well, not
highlights?
appropriate, then, well, I could add it to the highlights, but it's kind of like, if you see it, if not,
If you're not following him, guys, you missed it. Sorry.
there you go. But in this new town, there is a film society. There is a local film society, and it runs from September to May, and they show a film every 2 weeks. They print out a little leaflet, right? And it has the whole season's programs in. So at the beginning of September, you know what films are going to be coming up right up until the end of May, right?
Nice.
And it is a really interesting, eclectic selection of, I'd say predominantly like 80% of the films are the ones you'd kind of find on Mubi.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the past season included The Teacher's Lounge, Fallen Leaves, some bigger films, some smaller films, a lot of non-English language films, which is great. And there's a little blurb in the little leaflet. And if you want to be part of it, you pay a little membership fee. I'm not actually a member yet because I'd only moved to the area recently. But my friend was like, I can bring some guests. So we went along last week to that week's presentation, which was Perfect Days.
Yeah.
The Wim Wenders film from
Yeah.
last year. As we go to the Village Hall. Well, it's not a Village Hall. It's more of like, it's a town hall.
Yeah.
And like, we go in and it's like, you've got the tiered seating. And it's probably where like the nativity is put on at Christmas. And
I love how sort of local village you're
this is
becoming,
it.
yeah.
And I was like, and everyone, you pay your like £4 to get in, and
It's great.
You get someone's pouring out wine into a plastic cup if you fancy it, and everyone there is over the age of 65, except us. So we were really skewing the age group down.
When you say you do a film podcast, they're like, "That's lovely. What is that?
What is that?" They welcome you in. We choose our seats. We got there a little bit late, so we went right at the back, and it's just this nice auditorium, and it's played on DVD, right? They just play on DVD, but like they still have sound system around, so there's still some bloke at the back pushing the buttons. And then when everyone settles in, some guy at the front, who again is probably in his mid-70s, gets up with a printed piece of paper and says, "Welcome to this week's Film Society. We'll be showing Wim Wenders' Perfect Days." Wim Wenders, born in Germany, and gives a whole run-through of Wim Wenders' career, talks about his highlights, and it was very wholesome and polite. And then we settle in, everyone sits down, lights go down, and the film starts. And James, it was the best behaved audience I think I've ever had in my life.
Fantastic.
Not a single phone was brought out. No one talked.
Don't
no
have
one
them.
ate. Yeah, they don't have them.
No
No one got their pager out.
Yeah.
And it was so well behaved, and it was also such a lovely community vibe because, like, yes, you and I are very lucky. We get to go see things at big cinemas, big multiplexes, and this is a kind of makeshift environment where someone is playing it through a DVD and it's projected on. But
Can we see Secret Wars there in like a well-behaved audience?
Oh, I love that. And afterwards, people kind of got up and were just like, "Well, that was very interesting, wasn't it? What did you think?" They're very, very good. And I was like, I love this blend of community and film, and that there are people from far and wide who've come to this every 2 weeks to celebrate
really
film and
nice.
enjoy it, and enjoy films outside of their comfort zone.
And a very wholesome film to choose.
A very wholesome film to
thing.
do.
Yeah.
I did have a very big meal beforehand, and I would say if anyone's seen Perfect Days as you have, James, it's sedate
life.
Yeah.
It's you. I think the first act is one of the days played out in almost all of the detail, and then you go through that day again. Like I'd say maybe like 5 to 10 times, but sort of focusing on different things. It's a slice of life, little things
beauty,
are
the
picked
mundane,
up on.
right?
Totally,
this,
and it really is beautiful.
It's
and
beautiful,
I now want to. When I think of Tokyo, I think of toilets now in the worst way, but in the way that I cannot wait to use the public restrooms.
Yeah.
In
Some of them
Tokyo,
look fantastic,
amazing. They look so good with the cool, the frosted glass that switches on and off.
And like very beautiful. But I mentioned the meal thing because, you get in there and it's like lights down in a community hall and it's very mundane and sedate. And I'm sat there like, oh no. Oh no, the heavy eyelids are coming. Yeah. And at one point, like, Anna looked at me and I had to like be like matchstick my eyes
sleep
open.
Is really... It's really one of those tough things. When you get caught in a situation, you are jet lagged, tired, and you feel it coming. It can be one of the hardest things to resist, to not fall asleep.
Do you know what I always think about is, I never watched it, but do you remember in the early noughties, they only did this once. It was a British reality TV show where these contestants were basically sleep deprived for a week, and the person who stayed awake the longest won. And it'd never been done before, and it's not been done since. Yeah. And basically, I think as they started to do it, they realised how dangerous it was. Oh my God, and it started initially, the rules were, whoever stays awake the longest, if you fall asleep, you're out, right? Yeah. Gives a cash prize at the end. But then they realised that was so dangerous that you're allowed to have like micro naps here and there.
Yeah.
But I remember the final 3, by this point, these people have been up for like a week, was it was a live studio audience. You know how they used to do Top Gear with everyone stood around? Yeah. Everyone stood around and they had 3 beds in the middle and they put the contestants in the beds and they just turned all the lights off and the person who stayed awake the longest won. And I always think about that. Imagine if you're like completely sleep deprived and you're put in a lovely, comfortable bed.
But 100 people are watching.
And they turn the lights off, I know. But then they just... You'd be out instantly. Yeah. Anyway, that person won. But I always think about that when I'm like tired or trying to fight sleep.
Yeah,
those people fought sleep for cash.
Not to go on about like how dangerous it's not sleep. So there are loads of podcasts where like that knowledge is out there. I think it's very important.
Well, I think it's also like it's fair to say that sleep is good. That's okay. Like drinking water is good for you.
It's become this thing where I think people feel, everyone knows it's important, people feel very judged by the endless clips of like, if you don't sleep, you'll get cancer and you'll die. Yeah. But the really interesting one is that when you're sleep deprived, we think we're quite good at knowing when we're tired, but the brain is actually very bad at knowing that it's very underslept. So there's moments where you are very underslept, but you might go, oh, I'm feeling fine. But your cognition and your reaction time and your ability to focus and do tasks is like severely inhibited. And there's this debate of like, it was a lot of the great successful people who've achieved great things like a moon landing, like a scientific discovery, like a great speech the next day in exam. A lot of those great moments are done on minimal sleep. People don't get good sleep the night before, or they're working late into the night. And so if you could correlate bad sleep with progress, it would be this really horrible piece of epidemiology where like really lack of sleep has resulted in some of the greatest discoveries. But the danger is, and I think this is a junior doctor's issue as well, is that if you're very underslept, you can do the job at that moment fairly competently, but your drive home, incredibly dangerous. It's the equivalent of being like several glasses of wine deep. But the brain is not as good as knowing it's underslept than we think we are. We think we know what fatigue and tiredness feels like, but actually you're unaware.
Also, what you're saying about like, it's true. Yeah. You can do the moon landings and all that stuff. You can build up to the deadline and the task. Yeah. But the fallout from it afterwards is what's bad. And like, I think there's data that suggests that, if you have really poor sleep in your 20s and 30s, it like contributes to cognitive decline in your later years. But we're not a health podcast.
We're not saying that.
So we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about hot takes this week, guys.
Oh my God.
Different kind of episode. Sizzling away. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, which was all about the most expensive episodes, most expensive we can tell you the most expensive episodes, most expensive films ever made. Do check that out. But this is going to be about some hot takes. We did this as like a bonus clip a few months ago, didn't we? Yeah. Home Alone 3 and Hook and
did well. People liked it.
Yeah,
they liked
Crazy Stupid Love, not so good.
Yeah, but it did well.
Oh no,
it was fun to get the opinions out there, to draw some lines in the sand. Yeah, it's forced me to really think. Yes, James, I do believe this, and I'll put it out there. You know what I mean?
This is a hill I'll die on.
Chill, get off the pot, James, on this.
You mentioned going to the toilet.
Twice.
Just in general, in the past few weeks, it's just sort of come up in your
what was the other
phrase there? You just talked about how your bladder exploded after September 5. Anyway.
It did, the film, not like... I'm fine. Also, make sure you check out Double Take from Friday last week. We reacted to the new Fantastic Four trailer.
Batman 2, cancellation rumours, Nolan Bond. And we've got another Double Take coming this week. Already, we're going to be talking about the Smashing Machine trailer reaction, which is the new Safdie brother movie. Singular. Yeah. I forget which one, but it's the brother. And Emma Mackey cast in Narnia, and much, much more, because we haven't even got to the end of the week yet. We're recording this on the Tuesday of this week.
You know what we never talked about? We never talked about Ryan Gosling being attached for that Star Wars film with Sean Levy.
Oh, yes.
We never talked about that.
Should we talk about it on Double Take?
Should we do it now?
Should we just do it now?
I mean, it's one of those things where like A Star comes out and it's still a film with just a logo, but now it's a film with a logo and a star.
But it's the first proper Star Wars film. I know they're making Mandalorian and Grogu, but it feels like the proper...
And they also confirmed that it's post Episode 9, which immediately I'm like, what's going on here? We've defeated evil twice. What's left? Are we not happy? What's happening?
There's like factions of... there's going to be other evil in the universe,
Just you saying that aloud make me bored. When you said, I guess there are factions. It's like, what? No, it's good. Evil. We defeated evil, the manifestation of evil, twice.
Okay, but maybe
what's going on?
Maybe this hasn't got anything to do with the Force. Maybe it's just like an army, a different army that didn't like the Empire, but it doesn't like the Republic. You know, maybe they're monarchists.
A second order.
Yeah, a second. They've had the first order, the second order now. You just, I don't know, study French history and it'd be like that. Like,
yeah, just the things rise, they come down.
Something like that.
Monarchies, economies.
I've never studied French history. That's why I couldn't offer any more.
Of course,
all I know is that there were like, successive waves of, it wasn't
but
just
you
like
can sound like you have. You say, well, if you look at Italian history, you'll know.
Do it like Rory Sutherland, if you study French history, okay, you'll realise there's a republic going to happen. Yeah. Anyway, hot takes is what we're going to be doing today. So we'll be firing off some opinions. We'll also read out some of yours that you've contributed over email. We were actually inundated with so many that we're not going to get through all of the ones we sent through today. We'll cherry pick some that we're going to talk about, and we will return to the other opinions at some point in the future. So do not worry. Other than that,
let's do it.
Let's just do it. Let's dive right in.
Yeah?
I'm going to get you a nice little cute can of WD-40.
I said, pocket like, size. I'm totally happy if you want to take complete ownership over the project.
Well, I'm going to have to.
You want to spearhead Operation Squeak.
Operation No Squeak.
We're going to give you full autonomy and all the budget in the world. You use the PULP Kitchen card.
There'll be no more squeaks in this house.
Ready?
So, James, take it away. What's your hot take of the week?
So, I think that Quentin Tarantino is absolutely right to only release one more film after his 10th. Ooh. And the reason I say this is that when I look at it, I really do think that as directors do get older, the chances are most of them get worse as they get older. Now, I know what you're thinking. One of my favorite films of the last few years was Killers of the Flower Moon. And a director like Martin Scorsese absolutely is still churning out amazing films. And I was wrong to use the word churn because he's doing more than just churn them out. But there are so few opportunities for people to make amazing films, leave a lasting legacy, and not taint it. When you think of some of the really great artists who are no longer with us, who couldn't make any more art, artists like Amy Winehouse, Heath Ledger, Kurt Cobain, James Dean. The reason these people are so glorified and valorized because A, they were sort of like immortalized in their youth, but they made great things and never got to touch them and iterate them all over again. Are we not a little bit bored of seeing films from the same, let's be honest, mostly old white directors in the form of Ridley Scott, Spielberg, Scorsese, Fincher? I mean, everyone saw Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis as an amazing example of this. Do I want all of these films to stop making films? No, but I think Quentin Tarantino is showing an enormous amount of restraint and respect for the art of creation by doing what he wants to do, saying what he wants to say, stopping and leaving space for other different voices in cinema to make films instead of him. And I think more directors should take a really hard look at what they've done and go, do I have anything more to say here, really? And would I be better and more well remembered if I tapered off and stopped and let other people with a different voice from a different generation redefine cinema for us? I think Tarantino is absolutely right, and I've been umming and ahhing all over it, and I think it's absolutely bang on that he stops after his next film.
But don't you think there's a responsibility, in terms of you're thinking big terms now about the role of an artist, is to continue to strive and to learn and to draw from the culture around them and never... This is what I get from Scorsese. It's like I see someone who, even in their 80s, is still trying to push new boundaries and do new things. You know, Scorsese is different to Ridley Scott. I think Ridley Scott is starting to play it safe.
I'm not trying to compare them all.
No, of course. But what I find inspiring about someone like Scorsese is that he's still trying to do new things. I really feel like he takes on this sort of like Atlas-like responsibility of the artist to be, this is my duty as an artist to continue to deliver until my hands are broken, that I cannot use my tools anymore.
And I totally agree, and I agree with everything you say, and I think he really is that. And you know what, George, you and I are going to be first in line for whatever he does next with Leo and all of that, and we're probably going to really enjoy it. But imagine if that isn't good. And we start, and maybe the film after that really isn't good. I'm not saying it will, but imagine if it is. And all of a sudden, this legacy, everything you just said about Scorsese starts to become tainted. I believe he can continue to go on to make great films. But wouldn't it be more amazing to go, you have the most incredible legacy. You've had so many opportunities to redefine cinema and say what you've wanted to say.
Yeah.
Isn't it now better to take a pause, do something else, let other people come in who aren't trying to tell the same types of stories and do something different?
I think your point about how I totally agree. Like famously, if artists die young, for example, their work is then therefore time locked. But another non-morbid example is like the Beatles. You know,
I agree.
All four of them went off and had their other solo careers, but because it was time locked up from 1962 to like 1970. That it was the era of the Beatles. That's all you get. That's why I think they've been kind of deified in the way they have been. Whereas a band like the Rolling Stones just continue to go, delivering good work, varying qualities, but it's still good work. But like, there's a reason why people talk about the Beatles and Rolling Stones in different kind of ways.
I also think cinema is in quite an interesting place in terms of like the age of its media. It's only like just over a lifetime. Like it's about 100-something years old, and it's almost
That's
like
a long lifetime.
It's a long lifetime, but it's like it's almost most of it is in most people's living memory,
Yes.
older people's living memory. So that means that these names that everyone has grown up with the percolation of media and technology, it means that we're still kind of carrying some of the middle-aged generation of the great filmmakers, and maybe we haven't seen enough of a cycling of the old voices to bring in the new.
The thing is,
if we keep holding on to these old voices, brilliant as they are, and some of those directors I just wrote out have made some of my favorite films, and I love them for it. But I'm almost thinking like, God, it would have been interesting if Ridley Scott had stopped maybe 10 years ago, if Spielberg had stopped 10 years ago.
But isn't the problem also on the audience putting too much weight on the idea of legacy, for example? So let's say Tarantino does his 10th film and it stinks, right? Because right now, if you were to draw this last film thing, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood would have been a great last film.
Yeah.
But if he does another one now, he's also put himself under pressure because now whatever film he makes, he's said to himself, this is going to be my final film. He's already abandoned one project, The Movie Critic.
Yeah.
So...
But like similarly, when Hateful Eight came out, obviously it wasn't his last film. Nobody told him it was going to be his last film. Hateful Eight came out. A lot of people kind of were like, on it. I don't think it was like disliked, but it's not many people's favorite Tarantino films. I don't think that ruins his legacy of all the films before it. And if that had been his last film, we still would have got to enjoy all of his other films. It would have been, God, he made 8 films and they're all brilliant and they're all different and it's his voice and he left a legacy. And I just looking at that restraint and how you and I on Double Take, we report so much on reboots, sequels, which are granted are a different thing, but people taking something and never just wanting to stop, and the power of leaving people wanting more, I think is so powerful. I'm kind of like, do you know what, Tarantino? Fair play.
Well, do you know what? I agree. I respect the restraint. What I see... Actually, there's a commonality between Tarantino and Coppola in that you could argue they both have ego there, right? It takes an ego on Tarantino to go, no more after 10. Yeah. I'm big enough and I'm sure enough of myself to say that's going to have 10. It takes ego with Francis Ford Coppola to say, no one's going to give me the money to make this. I'm going to make it myself, even though it was terrible. Whereas if you're someone without an ego, which is, I don't see someone like Scorsese having an ego. I really do feel like he's trying to service the audience. Yeah. He's really trying to, as I say, carry filmmaking on his back, so he's still able to deliver good works. But Ridley Scott, for example, has ego in his perpetual continuance. Look,
we talked about like hearing Ridley Scott talk about making his most recent films, and there's we noticed this at the premiere. There's a sort of dismissive, I just got it over the line, made it quickly. Yes. I know what I'm doing, so therefore I'm right.
But also a very self-congratulatory tone about his own movies. He put his own movie in his own letterbox top 4. Yeah. Right? He was on Mark Maron's podcast and he was talking about his movies and he was like, Thelma and Louise, great fucking movie. Yeah. Then I made The Mission, great fucking movie. Like
he's birthed a lot of like active franchises for right now.
So I think ego is the key. But what an interesting take. Sizzling hot.
Yeah. I'd like to have the new Mount Rushmore of cinema directors that don't all look and talk like that.
So I have 2 takes today, and they're kind of slightly ones I touched on in the earlier days of PULP Kitchen, but I'm very aware that our audience has massively grown then, which is great. Thank you for joining us. And I thought I want to return to some sort of topics that I talked about. I think in like early 2022. That I think long-time listeners will be familiar with, but I want to reinstate for those who are new to the club. So, and this has been on my mind for a while, actually, in the years since we last talked about it. James, I think we've talked about this off air, but Better Call Saul is not only better than Breaking Bad, it is one of the best TV shows of the past 25 years. Yeah. The execution and way it is delivered is up there with like a Greek tragedy. Yeah. The arc it delivers over 6 seasons is just perfect, and I think it culminates in a final season that is surprising, deft, shocking. The moral dynamics of all of the characters are so interesting. Of Jimmy, of Kim, of Nacho, of Gus, of Mike. Whether you've got new characters or ones from Breaking Bad, the moral exploration of these characters and how they are mired in the quagmire of crime, and none of them can get out of it. The more they try and struggle, the more they're kind of sucked in like a quicksand. And I find that so interestingly explored. And it's different in a way to Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad, which is dealing very much still in criminal TV tropes, a little bit, brought a lot of fresh material. Don't get me wrong, Breaking Bad, great show. Vince Gilligan, great writer, as we found with Better Call Saul. But what I find interesting about Saul as a character is that unlike Walter, who becomes a bully, becomes mean, becomes a killer, Saul is weak at many points. He says himself he's morally flexible. The only thing that Saul has going for him is that he's just a fraction smarter than everyone thinks he is, which always gives him the slight edge, but only just. And I think that's, for me, is more dramatically interesting than watching someone who isn't a chemical genius, who isn't going to shoot someone, try and struggle and fight their way through this underworld, also torn between very big themes of light and dark, of the person he always wanted to be, Jimmy McGill, being tainted and pulled with the sort of dark creation, the moral blackening of himself with Saul Goodman. And, there's a point in the final season, I'd say halfway through, where they deliver a moment that really is kind of like the final jigsaw piece of why Saul becomes the Saul character we know in Breaking Bad. And it is so shocking and surprising, but also makes complete sense with the character, that I was like, this TV show has been laying the groundwork for 6 beautiful seasons, and then it delivers this moment that my jaw was on the floor with what had happened, but I was like, of course that makes complete sense. And I still think that Bob Odenkirk has not been given the proper credit for the dramatic performance he gives, because I think he's the shadow of the goofy sidekick that Saul is in Breaking Bad still lingers, but the real dramatic meat of Better Call Saul, like I said, is so tragic, is so interesting, and Odenkirk does it so well. Had a near fatal heart attack while filming the final season, managed to come back and deliver a great performance. There's a line in the final episode that for me is like an Arthur Miller play. And I remember when he said, I was like, that's brilliant. So Vince Gilligan, a genius. I can't wait to see what he delivers. Now he's done the Albuquerque years. He's done Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. I can't wait to see what he does next. But, the show never got the audience that Breaking Bad had. Yeah. It got the respect within its circle, and I feel like people didn't quite translate over, maybe because it wasn't such a hard criminal edge. It was dealing with legal practices and a class action lawsuit with an elderly person's home in the first season, right? But the writing is superb. The performances are excellent. And whenever I think about that show, I think, what a beautiful, beautiful TV show that was. And people might be reluctant to jump in because they think if they haven't seen Breaking Bad, do they want to watch that first, or do they want to jump in halfway through a story? But for me, it's one of my favorite TV shows. And whenever I think about it now, I say to people, that is one of the best TV shows of the past 25 years.
I'm familiar with your ringing endorsement, and I agree. I don't see people talking about it in the same extent. I was in that situation where I think 3 seasons were out when I started to watch it, really got into it. And it was just one of those things where like the season started coming and I just never had a good reason to go back. But I'm like so familiar with how much you love it. And I agree, like I see all of the bones in what I've seen. And I really thought it was so much more, it's so much more than just the surface of like legal drama in cases and like being sucked into crime. It seems to have so much that's great about it. And it's like Breaking Bad gets all the flowers, and it's almost like any credit going to Better Call Saul seems to come via Breaking Bad, whereas I think what you were trying to say is like, no, while it does stand on the shoulders of Breaking Bad, it without a doubt, has its own weight to carry and shove around. So yeah, I really do see it, and I don't see enough people talking about it in the way that you do, but I do believe you.
I mean, for me, it is to Breaking Bad what like Frasier was to Cheers, which is you break off a little piece and grow a very successful another piece. Also, it's worth saying that when Breaking Bad finished, it was really kind of at the peak of its powers. And Vince Gilligan took that momentum and took that world and went straight into creating Saul. And it wasn't like Breaking Bad had finished at a low point and where it was tired. It was really kind of hitting its stride. Yeah. And so Better Call Saul benefits from going straight in at the peak of its powers.
Do you want to rewatch Breaking Bad now you've finished Better Call Saul?
Yes, I do, because I watched it.
From what you've said, I mean, I don't know what happens, but it sounds like it would recontextualize a lot of Breaking Bad for you from Saul's perspective.
I would love to watch Breaking Bad straight through into Better Call Saul and El Camino again as well, which I think was really El Camino was great, but that is 11 seasons in a movie. And I love it, and I really do want to do that, but it's like there is also so many great things on TV right now. But I implore you, if you haven't taken the time to go and watch it, please do. And when I finished the final episode, I knew so few people who also watched the show. I think it was myself and my parents, and I finished it on the sofa alone. And I was like, I only have my parents to talk to about this. People need to discuss it.
It's a horrible feeling that when you're like exploding with passion. You're like, I have to speak.
So it's excellent, and I really, really implore people to go and watch it. I love that show, and I will always stand by it. Respect for Breaking Bad, don't get me wrong, and I look forward to digging back into that at some point. Better Call Saul. Hit me with another, James.
So I think that The US Office is one of the most overrated sitcoms of all time. And the reason I say this is because I just think that it is far too inconsistent to be as highly regarded as it is. Don't get me wrong. Boo. I do want to throw it some credit. I do think it is being genuinely innovative with its comedy style. I do think it took the platform that the UK Office gave it, started to try and iterate off it, but eventually became its own thing. It birthed the alumni from US Office is genuinely amazing. Where do we start? They're all sort of really great, huge stars in their own right. But ultimately, when I've watched the first 4 seasons, which I haven't finished it, but I believe from most people I've spoken to, that's the better half of the show. And I've seen clips and a handful of episodes from the later part of the show. But even during what many people would agree to be the better seasons 2 and 4, depending on how you count, I've always found it mildly chucklesome, and I'm always surprised when people are like, this is hilarious. If anything, I found it a little bit annoying. For me, personally, the shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm, Peep Show, Friends, Seinfeld, The In-Betweeners, South Park, and The Thick of It all stand way above, in my estimations, the US Office. Just like so clearly in terms of how funny they are. Purely. And then I look at The Office UK, which showed an enormous amount of restraint to do 2 seasons and 2 Christmas specials. And I look at that and I go, that is so much better and more decisive than the US Office. And I think it's that classic show, a classic thing where a TV show vastly outstayed its welcome. And it should never have gone on for as long as it did. It would be considered a lot better if it hadn't done that much. I'm always very surprised. If people want to start talking about what are some of the best seasons of a comedy show, I would indulge the conversation about the US Office having some really great seasons. But as an entire series, I'm not saying it's a bad show. No. I'm saying as an entire series, I think it's overrated as a sitcom.
Well, this is very timely. And, I welcome opinions. First of all, it's worth me saying, The American Office was like the first TV show that was ever my favorite TV show.
Yeah.
I discovered it kind of on my own. It was 2007, and it was like the summer.
It wasn't rated for you.
It was at that time when it wasn't really. It was still only season 2 of The American Office, and it hadn't quite hit its stride yet, even in America. And there was just a snobbery in England about, well, the UK Office was great, and the US Office, why would they remake that?
And the tone and the comedic style is very different. So I understand that.
But I started watching it on TV Links. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Back in the day, like we were doing school exams, and I would go home in the evening and watch it, and I got really sucked in. And I remember finishing season 3 like the night before the last day of school. And I have real memories of getting into it, and I was completely sucked in. And I have a real special place in my heart for like loving The American Office, and it became like my show because no one else was watching it, and I would recommend it to people like, no, the US Office is actually really interesting, and they say, and it wasn't really being shown in the UK as much yet. So just to understand where I'm coming from, I'm
But
also
that's a whole series.
Well,
is what
I
we're
will go
talking
on to
about,
that. I am also bizarrely in the past month have been rewatching it purely to give me a break from Friends, just for some sort of casual content watching. Look, I agree. It's been like heavily valorized. I agree that it's inconsistent and absolutely went on for too long.
Yeah.
I do think if they had ended it when Steve Carell had left, you'd have a really great season on your really great show on your hands. It does kind of fall apart. There's a really interesting podcast series called The Oral History of The Office, which I recommend people listening to if you're a fan of the show, that breaks down how lucky that show was to survive. That show nearly died so many times. It was such a confluence of fortuitous circumstances that meant that show could be alive.
Strikes issues as well for them. Too.
I agree with that. I think some of the seasons do stand out for me. Like season 3 is one of my favorite seasons of TV, and 2 into 3. And yes, some of the ingredients are in the UK office, but I do like where they unpack that and explore it. I love the dramatic bones of season 3, which is like Pam is now the one that is single and pining for Jim, but Jim is now away and he comes back to the office. But now he's in a relationship. I just love all of that stuff.
So I watched that, like those great seasons, and I was like, it's fine. It's like funny.
Didn't you tell me you guys watched it while playing on PlayStation though?
I did a bit of that, but I was like still watching it fairly decently. Yeah.
I think season 1 of the US Office is underrated because I do actually think there are some great comedic moments.
That season. I think I did half of it, and I was like, this is just like American UK Office.
Okay, sure. Most people start in season 2, right?
Yeah.
I think seasons 2 to seasons 5 are excellent.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
I think season 6 is a little mid. I think season 7 has some of the best episodes and also some of the worst, and then it completely drops off, right? But I love it. I think Steve Carell was underrated in his performance. I do genuinely go back and look at his performance, and I think this is such a great comedic talent happening right here. He never won an award for it.
Yeah,
and I think we talked about this many years before, but take an episode like. When he comes back from vacation, he's been to Jamaica with Jan, and he accidentally sends the photo of the two of them around the company, and the look on his face when he's on the phone to Packer and he realizes that he sent it to packaging at Dunder Mifflin, and Steve Carell's whole performance is so funny. He gets the expressiveness, he gets the physical comedy, his delivery is impeccable, and Steve Carell is in his 40s there. He's had 20 years of comedy background, and I just love that. There are many things I really cherish about it. It's so different from the UK.
It's not worth comparing. No, the unfortunate reality is that first season is them taking the format before they've realised they need to take the bones and iterate. It was like read out by Americans, which I think was a mistake. Sure. But they didn't know. But it's just, and I think what you said is totally true, and like your experience is there, and I do agree that first half, it's like more like looking at a whole show, which is why I want to compare it to a show like Peep Show. Also lots of seasons, also long running, also many years between seasons. Sure. I look at what Peep Show did, and being consistent, characters getting older, actors getting older, moving through time, and I look at that and I go, that to me really rarely missed for me, Peep Show. I think that is such a better comedy. I think it has less of a massive appeal than I think the US Office does.
Well, okay, look, I'm not going to... I take your point. I can't compare it to Peep Show because they're just British and American. They're two different formats of TV, right?
I'm talking about sitcoms.
But let's just take American sitcoms. I agree. Something like Friends, I agree, is much more consistent. Yeah. I can look at the 10 seasons of Friends, lay them out in front of me and go, 90% of the time, I'm going to get a great run through of
There's no season you can avoid.
They've all got great ingredients in there. Yeah. And, Seinfeld, even though I have slightly more mixed feelings about it, has moments that are comedically brilliant, excellent, completely push the boundaries of comedy.
I always think Seinfeld in terms of innovating comedy
that's what I just said, pushing the boundaries, like really has some stuff that I really respect.
Curb similarly as well, consistent.
Curb is great, but I do think the US Office was one of those first shows where I remember thinking, I do actually love and care for and feel great warmth in the company of this ensemble of characters.
The familiarity,
right? The familiarity, like this sort of pseudo family, which is very baked into like American television anyway. I really felt a great affection for that. And I will also say, I feel like I'm coming around to sort in a way kind of agree with you, is that in rewatching it at the moment, I do love it, but because of the way it's structured and everything, it's that it's not something that delivers a gag a minute or a gag every 3 lines, like something like Friends. It's something that takes longer to deliver its comedic moments. And if you are familiar with the show, they're less of a surprise. They don't land as well. So I don't see myself rewatching it very often now. I would see maybe return to it every 10 years.
Yeah. It's kind of like the one of the reasons I bring up the conversation of like great seasons versus great show. It's like when Lost was at its very best, I genuinely think it's some of the greatest seasons of television ever. It was so beautifully written. That same feeling of familiarity with the characters. Like, I know some of these characters better than I know my cousins. Like, I know their deepest, darkest secrets. And seasons 2, 3, and 4 of Lost, I've rewatched recently. I'm showing Talia for the first time. And rewatched it, I was like, oh my God, this is just some of the best stuff I've ever seen. The unfortunate thing with Lost is that because those last 2 seasons, I think, really are a mess, and it's due to strikes, and it's due to writers not being rushed or want to change, whatever you want to call it, it does slightly taint it from being, or from becoming an overrated show. It does slightly taint it from being regarded as perhaps the best show of all time. Like your thing about Better Call Saul, you talked about that whole arc being so well refined and so well done, and the last moments really tying the bow and running you all the way through. It's like, I don't deny that the US Office is a really great show, and I'll totally give credit for where it's due in the comedic performances. It's like when we start talking about the greatest sitcoms of all time, I don't think it touches my top 10, not that I have it ranked out for you.
Do you think people, then there is a community? I think in a way, I think I do agree with you, but are you aware then of a certain band of people who just unequivocally hold it higher?
Yeah, I get it. And it's like right
comedies of all time.
And so many things, it's like right place, right time. And I grew up in the UK Office, which really, I think the name being the same thing and it being called The Office. And to me, the UK Office being such a quintessentially British sense of humour that the Americans had to take, sort of copy and then go and do their thing, I think was really tough. So I'm like, oh, this is a British humour thing. It's like the same. If anyone tries to do a US Peep Show, it's like, that's a British comedy.
I think they
that
tried.
is about,
and
apparently they tried. It's like, that's a British comedy. And so I think I had such a hard gear change for that. And I literally would rewatch the UK Office over and over and over and over and over again. So unfortunately, by association, it takes something away from me. And the lack of consistency in 8 seasons of the US, 9 seasons of the US Office, I just think as a whole show, it maybe can't be knocking on the very top floor. I appreciate I'm going to ruffle some feathers. And do you know what? I haven't seen seasons 5 to 9.
Well, season 5 is really season 5 is one of the best seasons.
So maybe I should jump back in, or maybe go again from 2 through.
So it's so funny because
I have been watching Friends casually, like you said, and maybe I should switch over to the US Office.
Well, one thing I'll say is, first of all, there are still moments in the US Office, that are really subtle and odd lines. I'm like, that's actually a really good throwaway gag, or like a sight gag or something like that. I'm like, I really like that. But in rewatching it, because I started it when Anna was away and she came back and she was like, oh, you're doing this again. And I had to break down the options we had for where we jump off. And I said, look, I'm not going to watch it all the way to season 9. Because that's just too long and it falls off, as we said. So here are the options. You can either watch it to the end of season 5, and I think you've got a great 4 seasons of TV there. You could go further and watch it to when Steve Carell leaves, and that's a pretty good run. You like I said, a bit of a mid-season 6, but Steve Carell's last episode is so well done, and it just in his arc brilliantly. So those are your options. The hard cut is at the end of season 5. The mid cut ended when Steve Carell leaves.
It's just interesting. Like, we've had so many conversations like this over the years about what a bad season or a bad ending does to a TV show, like Game of Thrones being, if you want to get nitpicky, you can call different seasons. But let's say it's a 10 out of 10 show for most of its runtime, and it's the ending that falls flat. How much does that affect our enjoyment of the series? On one hand, we're like, what a ride. But then you also go, yeah, but the ending just didn't quite. Does that stop it from being regarded as one of the greats of all time?
I think, and that almost comes back to your point, which is that when people say, oh, this is one of the greatest sitcoms ever, you're overlooking the fact that it falls off quite badly in the last final 2 seasons.
Or people really recommending you a show with loads of asterisks. It's like, okay, so don't watch season 1, or like give it a go, but then, that's a bad season, but then go back into that bit. It's always a bit of a,
I also think
can you stand the test of time?
I'm coming round to your opinion in a way, because I also think that you could...
I never said it was a bad show.
No, I agree.
I'm saying it's overrated.
If you were to study the screenwriting or TV production in a way, I think what happens to The Office after Steve Carell leaves is a really interesting case study in a show existing without a star. And I don't think it's ever happened before. And it's a headless chicken of a show. And it's weird because most shows would be cancelled at that point. But it kept going. And I look at all the problems that the show has afterwards. And if you want to study the problems of why a TV show isn't working, it's so true. It's like, how can a show exist? It shouldn't have existed.
And the cynical side of me is that at that point, it was the biggest comedy on US television, probably outside of Big Bang Theory. Like, it was the biggest show on television. And it wasn't, I don't think they made more because they had all these incredible ideas and arcs. It's because it was the biggest show on television. They wanted to make money. Yeah. So the cynical part of it, I'm sure, look, really great talented people worked on it and did their best. I'm just trying to say that, that refusal to end and finish is what taints it and becomes something different to like a great arc. Yeah. I do genuinely believe it's a really, really great show, and you watch it at the right time in your life like George did, and it was a wonderful melting pot. You'll regard it really fondly, which I just don't. It's more like in that top band of conversation. In my personal list, which doesn't really exist, but I rolled off some of my favourites, it's not close.
No, I agree. In the history of great sitcoms, I agree with you. It's not there.
But like where we talk about seasons, and like the way you talked about, season 3, like you just said, it's totally up there for the conversation in a way that I would put forward some seasons of Lost, but as a whole show. Yeah. Does that mean you shouldn't watch it? No. Like, go and have the amazing time, experience the ride. Seasons 1 to 5 or 6 of Game of Thrones are amazing. Which is such a shame about the ending.
I also think it's a generational thing, because like in the same way that Gen Z have like rediscovered the Star Wars prequels in their own way, like Billie Eilish very famously like watches The Office all the time and has seen it like 10 times through, knows so much about it. They've done quizzes with her. They had her on that oral history podcast. And I feel like almost she's representative of a Gen Z audience who just like dose that stuff every single night. But I don't think that the show exists for that for me.
Anyway. Another thing that I was thinking about, just as you were talking, it's like we went for dinner with like an industry peer of ours. We were talking about TV shows and upcoming TV shows and the lengths of seasons, and like the Netflixification of everything brought the season order low. Oh, it's starting to happen anyway, but like now we don't get 24 episode seasons like we grew up on. And it went to 13, then sort of 10, then 9, and sometimes you'll see like 7, 8 episodes. So it feels like they're getting shorter, but the episodes are longer, but the budgets are bigger, but the time they spend on our screens is less because they want to get you on the next thing. And I really do miss, and despite just having a go at shows for running too long, I really do long for and miss the connection and the bond you get, and the familiarity and the ritual you get from hanging out with those characters over a long period of time. Or when you followed a show week to week and waited for it to come on television, it was like Tuesday night, I watched the show. The familiarity and the connection and how long it sits with you, I really do think we're missing in current TV shows. And I think it's a huge, huge shame. And there is something, I'm not saying it should be every show. I don't want the next season of Stranger Things to be 24 episodes long. But there is something I think we've lost, which is that bond between audience and character. And you feeling like, oh, I really knew these characters. How long were the seasons of The Office towards the end?
There were 22 episodes.
22 episodes.
Oh, that's my other thing, by the way. The final season of The Office should have been like 10 episodes long.
Right.
But it was like they did a full 23. I'm like, no, you should have cut that down.
Almost the 20 episode season sitcom is dead.
Is it still? I mean, you still get things like, you still get what they called multicam sitcoms that you do in a sound stage that are 23 episodes. I'm pretty sure you do get that.
What shows?
I haven't watched US sitcoms in a while, but like you still have like the broad brush, the 2.5 Men type. I know that doesn't exist anymore. But on your point, I absolutely agree. And actually, on your point just there, it's how people a few years older than us talk about the X-Files. Yeah. That was a case study of a show that ran for 24 episodes a season with hour-long episodes. It's what when I tried to watch it, that was what stopped me from watching it.
It's just too much.
It's just too much. Yeah. But if you think about it, how often that is on TV, and for it's a good hour slot. Everyone watching that. Also, the benefit at that time was that because more people were watching singular channels and watching one thing, it really created a sense of community. Like, I can't wait to watch X-Files next week.
Quite fractured now.
X-Files kind of owns the water cooler moments. Yeah. And that's what we've lost. But if someone, to be fair, sat me down now, though, and said, do you want to watch a 24 episode season with an hour each time, I'd be like, that's half a year.
And there's so much competition. It's like you used to have a number of channels on television that would release stuff in real time as the clock moved, whereas now there is just content competing for your attention along with everything else.
Which is also, sorry, we'll move on, but like TV as a snake kind of eating its own tail. The problem is then it's really hard to talk about TV. This has been the case for a while, but if you talk about TV, you quickly get into, oh, well, I don't have that streaming platform. Oh, I do, but I haven't started that show yet. Or that's on our list.
Fractured audience.
And actually, as a result, or if I have watching it, I'm behind you and there's spoilers ahead. Yeah. So actually, it becomes impossible to talk about it. And if you take away the ability for people to talk positively and enjoyably about a TV show, it actually affects the culture that surrounds it and affects the way people view it, which is why there is a joy sometimes to watching big mainstream TV shows like
available to everyone.
The Traitors, The Apprentice, all that kind of stuff. Yes. Like Big Brother, even like reality TV that's available to everyone, because our actual enjoyable conversation around the proper dramatic stuff is so fractured.
Like how many times?
It's fine. Sorry.
Like how many times have we been standing at like a friend's drinks party and people start talking about shows they're watching, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm watching Severance season 2 and it's brilliant. It's on Apple TV, and one person, as you said, oh well, we don't have Apple TV, and it creates this like thing where like, oh yeah, well it's obviously very accessible to them, but it's like already moved them out of the conversation.
Everyone is in their own little silos.
I saw an interesting thing about Apple TV compared with the others, and it was kind of a double take discussion, but it was about obviously they've had like a couple of back-to-back hits. If you think about The Studio, which is brilliant, you should all watch The Studio. We'll probably review it soon. And Severance most recently with its second season. It's been like they've been the biggest shows, well Severance more, the biggest shows at the moment. That's really huge for Apple TV Plus. It's probably gotten them loads of new subscribers, but they were saying that because Apple TV Plus only shows their own projects, they don't license any shows. Like you can't finish Severance and go, oh great, I'll hang out on here and watch Friends or watch all of the Paramount movies or all of that. Their watch time is really low. So the biggest part of the conversation, and they're getting huge revenue, but people don't spend time watching on Apple TV Plus because you're not watching The Office or Friends on it. Whereas Netflix, you might finish insert huge Netflix show. Adolescence. And then you go, oh great, I'll watch Friends. And now you've spent another 3 hours maybe on that on that streaming service, which I think is quite an interesting model that they're doing. As it stands, Apple doesn't license other content for Apple TV Plus. They have the iTunes store, the TV store, if you'd like to buy something a la carte. But they just have their show. But that's only 8 hours of television, give or take, and then you're done. I thought it was quite interesting as a model. I really realised, I was like, yeah, of course they don't license third-party shows.
You can rent it if you want.
You can rent it. It's very available for you, but you would probably just flick over and see if Netflix or Prime has it. And it's quite interesting to go for that model. Anyway, just a thought.
Well, we're really cocky. We're really cooking today, aren't we?
We're really cocking.
Okay, let's move on to my second one. So again,
I want to watch some television.
Yeah, well, you'll be happy to know I'm moving back onto film now.
George, would you like to give your last steaming hot take?
Toilet humor usually.
You brought toilet into that. I know. You brought toilet into that.
You took a steaming hot take on my desk. Yes, let's do this. So this is something I talked about a little bit in 2022, but I want to talk about it again. For me, Spielberg's West Side Story is one of the best remakes of all time, if not, it's just in recent years. You know, he takes a classic, beloved film from the 60s and brings it to a new audience with such love and affection and excitement that it's so infectious. I really believe that if this film hadn't come out in the shadow of COVID, it would have been a bigger hit and had much bigger reaction from people. Tarantino saw it post-COVID, and he said that there were two films that were like true cinematic experiences. It was Top Gun Maverick and West Side Story. There's a middle sequence where it's the I Want to Be in America number, right? And the execution of it is so infectiously exciting. The movement, the colours, the sort of escalating chorus ensemble of it. I remember watching it in the cinema thinking, wow, this is so exciting. And you come away from the film with the kind of the musical beats in your head and this kind of, again, this excitement and love of the original film. And it's like the camera dances too. That's the only way I can describe it. I really feel like it's like Spielberg himself has been able to sort of transpose the musicality of the original musical into the way he makes it. And it's so infectious. I felt really lucky, actually, in hindsight, that I went to the cinema to see it and catch it, because a lot of people missed it. And, you know, Spielberg is great at delivering emotional, heart-rending, soaring moments. You know, we're familiar with that, whether it's like moments of great catharsis or you know, whether it's people being reunited or separated. And there are about 5 great moments in this film that really tug at your heartstrings. The whole finale is just unbearably sad and uncomfortable and heart-wrenching, but beautiful. And I just, you know, last year we had all the excitement about Wicked, which was great, and I love the enthusiasm for it, and it made a real case that musicals do have a place in cinema and they can generate an excitement in an audience. And I thought about West Side Story, and it was like it was just a few years too early or a few years too late. And if it had come out either before COVID or a few years later, it would have had a great audience and it would have had a great reaction. But it was kind of stuck in that middle bit. And if you go and watch it, it's Mike Feist's kind of first cinematic debut, Rachel Ziegler. Like, it's great. And they take Rita Moreno, who was in the original, and they recast her in the Doc character, who's looking at like the legacy of violence in the streets. It's brilliant. It's really, really great. And now when people talk about like kind of Spielberg's career or directors getting older, I'm like, well, Spielberg for me is on a great run at the moment. He made The Fabelmans, which I also think is fantastic. But obviously that was very kind of self-autobiographical. But when I look at West Side Story, it's like we're all tired with remakes and rehashes. But when I watched that film, I was like, you've made a really great case for how you can dust off something from the past and inject it with new life. And I love it. West Side Story, the new one, is just so beautiful.
Do you think, because I believe you, and I've heard brilliant things about it, do you think that maybe because Spielberg, and I think he does this with a lot of his recent films, he tries to, and I think often succeeds, but I think that remains to be seen with time, he tries to make a classic in real time right away. And I'm not saying that he's wrong for doing that, but I wonder if Spielberg, being Spielberg, godfather of cinema, is the obvious choice to adapt a straight adaptation of a beloved musical of an IP that old and bring it to cinema with that style and that careful construction, that maybe it is slightly overlooked as an obvious selection for that. I don't think it should be, and I think everything you said is most likely true. I wonder if it's played too straight, and if a more exciting, for example, younger, more experimental filmmaker had given different treatment to West Side Story that might not have been as good, would have drawn the eyes more than Spielberg's adaptation of West Side Story.
I know what you mean.
I believe it's technically sound and delivers what it needs to do. Is it the fact that it's Spielberg makes it less interesting?
I know what you mean. It's an established voice doing an established musical. Arguably, it looks very safe.
A story that people have seen.
A story that people have seen, exactly. They're familiar with it. It's a safe, familiar voice doing a safe, familiar thing. I totally see that, and maybe that's why people kind of kept away from it. But I think that's why I'm even more surprised and impassioned by it, because the filmmaking itself is actually so exciting and is so different. It's got much more dirt on itself, and then it manages to make... The thing about West Side Story is that they'll be walking down a very gritty street and then they'll just spring into, clicking their fingers. But he makes it work. Yeah. And I actually think what I would say to people is, if you want to see a very established director flexing his muscles in a different way, this is really interesting. I don't think we'd seen a musical from Spielberg before. I don't think we'd seen this kind of really affectionate, playful side. Maybe as he's getting older, he's getting wistful about cinema. That's why he made The Fabelmans, looking back at that. But
the death of the obvious choice, like for a lot of people, and I think the Irishman for Scorsese was an obvious choice. It was a Scorsese film. It was Goodfellas-ish, and I was ready to sort of turn my nose up at it. But when I watched it, I was like, it's very long, but it's very good. It is really, really good. It is well written, and the performances are fantastic in it. And I felt very much carefully carried through that film when I watched it. Doesn't make it bad, but maybe The Irishman, for a lot of people, is less interesting as a Scorsese film than maybe Killers, which still feels like a gangster movie in its own right. And I reckon for some people, The Irishman wasn't as interesting to them for Scorsese to make, because it felt like he was doing another classic in real time.
I think that actually. I didn't mind it, but I have less interest in going back to than I do with Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yes, Killers of the Flower Moon is one I really would really like to jump back into to reappreciate after having loved it a year and a half ago.
In the same way, actually, like even though on the face of it, Ready Player One is a bold choice for something like Spielberg to do, it's still 80s nostalgia, kids playing with bigger toys than they can imagine, which is kind of like inbuilt with kind of Spielberg lore, right?
Yeah.
Whereas something like whatever he's going to do next, The Dish, I think he's going back to sci-fi, I think, next.
Yeah.
But like Ridley Scott always playing it safe a little bit. Like Gladiator 2 is actually quite safe.
A lot of our takes today are sort of the theme of consistency and enduring appreciation. Is that fair?
Yeah.
It's a lot of what we're talking about.
Well, anyway, I still rate it, and I do. I think you're right about why people might not have gone for it.
Yeah.
But I say that if you are wondering about where you sit with Spielberg, And actually, we've got an email which I want to read out in a bit about where people sit with Spielberg.
Yeah.
I think, look at these last two films, and in particular West Side Story. It's great.
George, should we go through some of the hot takes that people sent in to Pulp Kitchen Podcast? Enough of us. What if we hear from Los Saironos? If you wanted to send in your hot take or just emails in general, you can, of course, send them in to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com, or you can DM us on Instagram @popkitchenpodcast. But
just
George,
like Marco has, who fittingly, as I wanted to read out, writes in about Spielberg. He says, "Hey, so modern Spielberg is terrible, and he should retire. He should do Tarantino, James."
Yeah, okay. I never said they should retire. I said they should consider sunsetting their work and thinking, how much more do I have to say?
So Marco says, modern Spielberg is terrible and he should retire.
Okay, it's a big take.
He hasn't made a great movie since 2002. War Horse, Lincoln, and Bridge of Spies are so mid it hurts. And somehow these bland movies keep getting nominated for Oscars. I hate War Horse especially. Such a weird movie about a grown-ass man who has a freaky love for his horse. You leave Michael Morpurgo alone, okay? It's a long time since I've seen it, but I swear there's a scene where he's in the trenches and while other soldiers are writing letters to their wives, he's writing love letters to his horse. Weird. And Ready Player One is just complete trash. I just feel like he has so many misses and nobody talks about them. It really gives me an appreciation for Tarantino and Scorsese, who keep making incredible movies late into their careers. Spielberg just doesn't have it anymore. I wonder if his style of sincerity just doesn't work anymore in these more cynical times. Well, thank you, Marco. But crucially, you've talked about Spielberg in the last decade. You haven't talked about Spielberg in this decade. So I return to my point, which is go and watch West Side Story and The Fabelmans, and then let me know what you think.
I think to call those films you mentioned, trash is unfair.
Yeah.
I think that, you could argue there's something less maybe exciting, they have a different quality to them than the pre-2002 ones. But yeah, it's big, it's punchy. I like it.
I'm trying to think of when Spielberg, he's talking about this era there, and like War Horse, Lincoln, and Bridge of Spies, they are quite safe.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, was Munich the last time he made a kind of bolder film?
Exciting, yeah.
It was kind of edgier about, death and consequences.
I like Bridge of Spies. I enjoyed it as like a home watch.
It's a very home watch.
It's a real sofa one.
Yeah.
It's a sofa film. This next one is from Maggie, who writes in, hello, George and James. James and George. Maggie from Edinburgh here. You asked for a hot take. I'll give you two.
Wow.
Both of which I love to argue about with movie bros. First, here we go. Chris Nolan is extremely overrated. I like that you just call him Chris. The reason might be less hot, but the passion behind the opinion is positively sizzling. I simply believe the man has not known a single woman. I cannot criticize anything about his cinematography or some of his stories. All the respect to Tenet. Headache-inducing convoluted plot doesn't equal good plot. But a lot of his characters' writing is questionable. I don't think it's unpopular to think of his movies as male-heavy, but I don't hear a lot of people analyzing his female characters enough to notice how shallow and caricature-like they are. His best effort was probably Anne Hathaway in Interstellar, and even she feels like a backdrop to the main character's story. Second will probably be Elliot Page in Inception, the sophisticated observer of all the surrounding men's journeys. I think I'd be able to overlook it all if all of them weren't so clearly just plot devices serving to only further the male character storylines. Feels extremely backwards for how highly regarded he is, especially as a storyteller. Go talk to some women, Chris. Should we start with that one?
Well, I think... I do see
Definitely.
Maggie's point. I think that the counter argument would be like, I suppose Murph was probably his boldest character, but obviously in the original version of the script, Murph was a boy. He does have a bad habit of having damaged women who often die, or if not become alcoholics, as a kind of side project to the men.
That was a strand of Oppenheimer I think we had a bit of trouble with when we first saw it, like the smashing the whiskey against the wall, and like the sort of the ramps of anger without sort of much justification, sort of amongst that last half of that film, which is so manically edited and beautifully woven. But I was like, oh, okay, I guess there's an alcoholic plotline here.
And I think Elizabeth Debicki Key's character in Tenet was like the real sort of like worst example of this, just like wounded, beaten up,
held up with a gun as like an object, a MacGuffin.
A complete plot device. And Carrie-Anne Moss, Memento, Rebecca Hall in The Prestige, Scarlett Johansson in The Prestige.
I also can't imagine The Odyssey really breaking the mold there.
No. No. The only women are going to be the sirens that, not our sirens.
Just looking at the bones of the story I'm not familiar with, I cannot see this becoming this like innovative female-led story.
You know that if we do see the Odyssey and they have the bit with the sirens on the island calling them over,
it's going to be a lot.
I'm going to lean over to you and go, sirens on our end.
Yeah. And then Mackie goes on to say, second, the really hot one, which I'm not even going to provide arguments before, Goodfellas is bad. I hate all the characters, the plot is boring, and the American mafia obsession for good. The lives of these people are just not interesting. Anyway, lots of love to you guys. Keep up the good work. You continue to be my favorite podcast. Sirens on my end, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie. I feel like I've spoken to a couple of people recently about Goodfellas who say this. Like, I get it, and similar with the Chris Nolan thing, not many women in it. I mean, I try to have this argument, which is like, because it's narrated by, I think it's Lauren Melfi's character in Goodfellas, it's kind of framed with a female angle that kind of lessens the male heaviness of it and the male gaze of it. But like, yes, it is kind of like celebratory in its violence and kind of fun. But that's kind of the point. It is kind of meant to be a little bit like, we shouldn't enjoy this, but we are a little bit like, as the character says in it, when Ray Liotta smashes the guy's nose in and gives her the gun, and she's like, most people would have run a mile, but I couldn't help it. It turned me on.
I think there's like an electricity that runs under Goodfellas. Yeah. It's really fun. I would actually divert people to a conversation we had a few months ago where we ranked Scorsese's films, or we sort of gave a definitive, what are the... It wasn't the
top
best.
Five.
It was like,
top
yeah,
five.
It was answering an email of someone who... had never... Owen. Oh,
yeah,
well done, Owen. We sort of ran through Scorsese's films, the ones we hadn't seen, the bad ones, the good ones. So I'd go listen to that conversation.
I mean, the whole bit towards the end when they're playing the Harry Nilsson song and he's trying to make the pasta sauce and he's got to go deliver the thing and the helicopters in the sky.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Great.
They referenced that in an episode of Clarkson's Farm. Would you believe it? They edited an entire sequence of that. And I was like, what's Goodfellas they're doing?
I was thinking about that show and like the best shows that get you to sign up to services. And I never had to sign up to Prime because I already had Prime for the next day delivery. But the only show I would consider buying Prime for, which I don't have to do because I already have it, is Clarkson's Farm. I don't think there's another show on Prime.
I've never watched
that I would tune in for.
I used to love Mr. Robot, and then I fell off of that.
Yeah.
But you're right. What's a show? I haven't watched a show on Prime in ages. Yeah.
It's Clarkson's Farm, which that's like reality TV.
Yeah, it's reality TV.
It's like not our domain. But Clarkson's Farm, brilliant show.
Should I have watched the second 2 seasons of that?
Yeah. Oh my God, they're fantastic. They're so good. So good.
This next email is from Stevie, who writes in and says, "Hello, J and G and G and J."
Hello.
Actually, you've just put hello, J and G, so you've just gone for double James there.
You think you would go G?
Saying J and G close together is really hard in the mouth. J and G.
It's because you got to bring your lips like... Yeah.
Very much enjoy the show. I'm probably in your older demographic of listeners, 51 years old. Hey,
hello, sir.
Represent. Lovely to have you. But my daughter Jess and I are regular listeners to both Double Take and your balanced, fair, and unpretentious reviews, and your balanced, fair, and unpretentious reviews were the reason I whispers quietly gave up listening to Mark Kermode. We've ripped some listeners out of Kermode's hands.
Welcome.
Brought them over the hill. Yes.
We're like them, but we do social media too.
There are only so many gushing reviews about somber art house movies about death and or farming that a person can take. Anyway, I have a view that I think will probably fit the hot take topic. Here you go. Stevie C says, I believe that Danny Boyle has never made a good film. I cannot understand why he's held in such great esteem. Trainspotting was just a cynical cash-in on the Britpop movement. It was very obviously a movie that was style over substance, and people have been fooled into thinking it's cool because it has a good soundtrack. Ewan McGregor was a horrible actor. He has improved with age, proven by his ridiculousness in the Star Wars trilogy. Having loved the book of Trainspotting, I saw it at the cinema. I did just say I am old, and somehow it was so highly regarded that I actually had to pretend to like it, not to get stick from my friends. But I was so bitterly disappointed by it. From that day, I have disliked every Danny Boyle movie. His directing is on par with Zack Snyder for just all-round annoying.
Oh, that's hot. Is he finished?
And Sunshine, don't get me started. You can tell someone's pretentious by how much they rate that film. Sunshine's not a pretentious movie. Anyway, His only great work is the Olympic opening ceremony, which was great.
Which was great. It was great.
But I don't think you can review that on Letterboxd. Truth is, I don't even know if it's that controversial, but possibly ruffles a few feathers or two. Keep up the good work, fellas. All the best. Stevie. So, is Danny Boyle overrated? Has Danny Boyle never made a good film?
Okay, so is he overrated? I think that's depending on how you rate it. I do have to fundamentally disagree. I think he has made some really, really good films. I think just to start with, the Trainspotting one, I just disagree. I think it's really electric. Yeah. The two ones that I do think are underrated films, there's two of his that I really drawn to. 127 Hours, I think, is really underrated.
Agreed.
And Steve Jobs, I've now seen 3 times, and every time I watch it, I like it even more than the last time, and I'm reminded at how brilliant the writing, the directing, the acting is in that film. It's such a wonderful way to tell that story about that person. A fantastic framing of a biopic that I wish more people would. I wish people would show that restraint and use like one vertical slice of someone's life to tell a story. I think it's really, really good. Slumdog Millionaire, I think, is cheesy, and maybe I like it less than I did when I watched it when it came out. But I do think it is really, really great.
Yeah,
Trainspotting, and I think T2 as well. Sorry, I think is actually really underrated. I like T2.
I think Trainspotting is a roller coaster for a reason. Yes, it's very stylish, maybe a little bit stylish, more stylish than it needs to be. But like, it feels like a roller coaster, and you're riding the highs, then crashing the lows on the next, and you feel at the end like you've been spat out, and you think, wow, maybe you, like Renton, you might have a chance at a better life.
Like living your 20s, really, just like coming out of it.
I agree with you about Steve Jobs. I agree with you about 127 Hours.
First half of The Beach is good.
28 Days Later is interesting. Shooting that on such a lo-fi format, that was really interesting. Taking the sort of zombie concept, I know they're not zombies, to Britain was very interesting. Interesting one.
I like the bravery though. Put it out there. This next one. Oh, hang on, hold on. This next one is from Sam, friend of the show, who says, "Hey lads, long time no speak. I've spent the last couple of months training my new puppy, Ronnie, photo attached, with a lovely photo attached.
What a beautiful...
Which has resulted in me not being able to get to the cinema since January, when my last film was a real pain, which I loved. Anyway, I managed to get to the cinema on Friday night for my first solo trip whilst my partner and pup were out with her friends. And I was lucky to be able to catch Sinners, and I'm so glad I was able to see this on a big screen and in a packed cinema. The music, themes had an almost whimsical aspect to them, and then horror was nicely placed. I especially enjoyed Jack O'Connell clearly having a great time." I will say, reflecting on Sinners, I sort of doubled down. I'm like, that was a really long setup for a party. Felt a bit like assembling the musical Avengers for a barn dance. It was long, that first bit. Beautiful. Needed to sort of set up the film.
I mean, there's probably not time this episode to talk about Sinners, but it continues to be a massive success. And we have lots of emails about it. We'll probably do it in the next week's episode. But yes, there's a lot to run through.
And a lot of people heard our review, which was 2 weeks ago for us, because we double recorded. But it was like, a lot of people were like, I can't, getting really defensive about our review of Sinners, which I thought was largely positive. We were largely very positive on Sinners, but just acknowledged a few things that weren't.
Were people disappointed?
Yeah, lots of YouTube comments, people coming out being like, I can't believe this, they have these prejudice, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, come on. Oh. And then someone commented being like, they really like the film. And I liked that comment.
Yeah, we did quite like that. Yeah, we did.
We did like the film. That's what I was confused about.
I will say that it's been a massive terror success, which is great. And I feel like there's a lot of passionate excitement about it. I'm not like on the Sinners train. Yeah. I like it, respect it. Yeah. I don't currently have any...
I've recommended it to a lot of people.
I think I don't think I'm as
I've recommended it.
I've kind of forgotten it, to be honest. Right.
I said original film, beautifully shot.
I agree with all of that.
In the cinema.
If people say to me, what should I go see? I say, we'll go see Sinners because it's really different.
Yeah.
But it's not like I don't think about it often. I also think I had a slightly different viewing experience to you. I had these people down my row who were too far away for me to do any action and tell them to shut up. And they just kept... It was constant nattering about the film.
Go visit them.
I couldn't think there was a guy in between us.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get in the way.
You got to do the...
Oh, I was trying everything. And they were just like, oh, honey, no, what are you doing? Oh, yeah. Anyway. And I think that really...
That multimedia screening, it's not for any company or anything. That can sometimes draw an audience, which see 5 films a year in the cinema. Do you know what I mean? Like certain...
So I think sometimes the dramatic tension, it's building this huge big thing to a party. I think it would kept on pulling the rug from under that.
There was a guy in front of me and Rory who
I saw with the phone on.
Phone on, not to answer a message, scrolling.
Yeah.
Scrolling Twitter.
I kicked his chair at one point and he looked around and I was just like, I didn't do anything. I should have kicked him in the head. No, we don't employ violence here.
Sorry. Sam goes on to say, the following night we had pre-booked to go and see Gladiator with a live orchestra in the Royal Albert Hall, which was incredible. Apart from the well-known films with classic scores, are there any other films you think would work with this format? Live orchestra, George.
Interstellar.
Yeah, I think that happens, yeah.
2001.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Challenges.
Oppenheimer would be cool.
Challenges, imagine that, but like synth
that'd be really cool, yeah.
With an actual tennis match as well.
Just Wimbledon. It's just Wimbledon. Can you imagine you just play that through? It's like Now onto my controversial take. Sam says, I think Big Daddy is a great movie and is one of Adam Sandler's best. It's got good humour, with Sandler not looking to be too over the top either. And I have to say, it almost draws a tear when Julian gets led away screaming, I wipe my own ass, and Sandler being deflated, sad, and only being able to muster a little, I know. That is, you know what? I haven't seen Big Daddy in such a long time.
Never
but
seen it.
There's something about Adam Sandler when he wants to make me cry.
Yeah.
It works. In Click, Big Daddy. What's the other one that really gets me tearful? He's got something about him, like this sort of slightly soft, broken man who eventually is able to experience emotion. I have fond memories of watching Big Daddy with the kids from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
I think I watched 20 minutes in an end-of-term chemistry lesson. Great. And all I remember is he goes to McDonald's to get the breakfast and they don't have the breakfast.
Yes,
that's
Steve Buscemi is sitting on it.
What?
It's a studio joke. You'll see it.
Oh.
Steve Buscemi is the guy. He's like, what? McDonald's? Breakfast open at 10:30.
Thank you, Sam.
Sam goes on to say, we love your content and looking forward to all the big summer releases, especially The Ballad of Wallace Island. Speak soon. Cheers, Sam. We have seen The Ballad of Wallace Island and we'll be talking about it when
that
it
comes
out.
out.
Yes.
Which is, I think, at the end of May. This next email is from Rian from Ireland, because they've put that at the bottom of their email, because I was going to say Ryan, like Ryan Johnson, but it's Rian. Hi, James and or George. I guess that works. It's like, if
I'm the constant, you're the variable.
Yeah, if he's there, and or George, if he's free.
I've been secretly uploading solo episodes for years. Hey guys, welcome to Don't Tell Him. Just me today.
Here's my hot take. Rian says, Daniel Day-Lewis ruins There Will Be Blood. The film is still pretty great, and PTA is, of course, the best, but Day-Lewis plays the ending. He's a psycho from the start, without any of the charisma which would have made his ability to maneuver as he does believable. So, what could have been a gradual reveal of this man's true darkness, and would have fit the metaphor of Daniel Plainview as America much better, rotten beneath the surface sheen, it's let down by Day-Lewis's obvious upfront mustache-twirling evilness. The emotional journey suffers as a result, and it's a pebble in my shoe every time I watch it. Hugh Jackman or Christian Bale would have been better. All this also goes for Jack Nicholson in The Shining. Phantom Thread, however, is a masterpiece and quite clearly the superior collaboration between the lads. Love the podcast. Beer Bois. I don't speak Irish, I'm sorry. Rian. Pronounced Rian. From Ireland.
I mean, do you know what? It is a very, very big performance. Yeah. And in lesser hands, I think would have completely fallen on its face. Yeah. But I do regard it as one of the great acting performances of all time.
Yes,
and I can see even you just saying Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, who I can see in the role. Sure. I
Christian
think
Bale more than Hugh Jackman.
Kind of Hugh Jackman, but
Hugh Jackman, really?
Well, this is what I'm saying. I can see them doing it. I don't see them pulling it off, and they're both fantastic actors.
Do you know who could have done it if I was to remake it now? Fassbender.
Great shout.
Fassbender for There Will Be Blood. Yeah.
I've abandoned my child.
Got that clipped thing. I've abandoned my child.
I've abandoned my boy.
I also disagree. But I do agree with you about Jack Nicholson in The Shining. Jack Nicholson is he's mad and crazy from as soon as after he's had the meeting at the hotel, or as soon as they arrive, he's there. He's already crazy. So there's not a gradual deterioration. I'm you were always weird and strange.
Yes, yeah.
It's like the hotel didn't make you
You're not
that
held
way.
in suspense over your strangeness.
No,
and
he quickly becomes, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Thank you,
That eyebrow
Rian.
starts to get...
Yeah, well, very well.
Thank you so much, Rian. This next one is from Max, who says, Dear George and James, brackets, my definitive stance on the matter.
Definitive stance.
He's officially George and James. You know what? Everyone's always been nice, but he's gone, no, it's George and James.
There we go.
Max goes on to say, His hot take is that The World's End is the best film in the Cornetto trilogy.
Right.
Although regarded as the least liked of the three, The World's End is, in my opinion, the most thematically sincere and rewarding on additional viewing. It's a film about going home and realizing that home isn't how you remember it. It's a film about addiction and being stuck in alcoholic youth, and it is also about the beauty of humanity being stubbornly imperfect. Whilst I love the other two films, and probably Hot Fuzz more, The World's End is the one that sticks with me the most. Writing this email, I also realized that I think At World's End is my favorite of the Pirates films. Maybe I just have a thing for World's Endings. Best wishes, Max from the IMAX. Hello again, Max.
Hi, Max from the IMAX.
Hope you're enjoying the IMAX.
You and I talked about The World's End recently. I think when we talked about our In-Betweeners 3 movie, that we might actually enjoy we'll get different things now from The World's End now we're older. That maybe went over our heads when we were 18, 19. So I'm my initial impulse is to be like, you're wrong, but I respect the fact that actually maybe I would resonate with it more differently now. But I do remember thinking the blue aliens just weren't that interesting.
I think I need to rewatch. I've only seen The World's End once, so I think I need to rewatch it and confirm. It'd be actually quite nice to do the Cornetto trilogy, maybe as a special, maybe on Patreon down the line.
You know what, James?
During
Because
a quiet
it's
month.
hot and sunny outside, I think we could just do a Cornetto.
Oh, do you like a Cornetto? I like a Cornetto.
Yeah. What's not to like?
A lot of people slag them off.
What?
Exactly. I'm always like, you stand down. I think Cornetto is perfectly good ice cream on a cold day.
I like soft serve.
Me too.
Cornetto has a bit of soft serve on it.
And do you know what I like about Cornettos is that when you go and get a whippy and you get it in a cone, I'm always pushing the ice cream down with my tongue, whereas I've always appreciated the Cornetto's gone, no, don't worry, sir. We've already filled your cone with ice cream. Yeah. We've already filled it, and it's lined with chocolate, and it's a nice little chocolate surprise for you at the end.
I like when you get a soft serve and you know it's good when like it's not watery and running straight away, when it holds its own.
Yeah.
And you get that.
What I will say, unfortunately, and this does happen, I'd say one in every 4 or 5 Cornettos I eat, the wafer is soft and it doesn't crunch. Oh no! I don't know if it's like it's damp. It's like damp cardboard. It's stale. I don't know what it. And sometimes it's just one half, where like maybe one half of the Cornetto is leaning on its side. And I'm so excited because I'm having my Cornetto and I have the top and as I work my way down into the thing, instead of getting that crunch, it's a moist clamp, and I go, fucking hell! This was my Cornetto. I think
if you buy it from like a corner shop, it's probably been there since last summer.
That's the thing. Whereas early summer Cornetto.
If you go to a supermarket, it's probably been rotated.
You want the end of summer because all the Cornettos are being eaten, so you want the new ones coming in.
Yeah.
It's a springtime issue, maybe.
Yeah.
Or a winter, if you have a Cornetto in the winter.
Who's doing that?
Well, just like some people just buy ice creams in the supermarket to have in their freezer.
That is allowed, I suppose.
Yeah, people might do that.
I'll allow it.
Yeah.
I love Magnums.
I'll have a winter Magnum.
Oh, a winter, not a summer Magnum.
I'll have a summer Magnum, but like if I'll find myself having Magnums in winter, like a Christmas.
What Magnums do you go for?
I like almond, but I'll have either.
The white? Do you like the white?
No, I don't like white chocolate. I don't mind it. I just don't
even chocolate ice cream. White chocolate ice cream with that.
No, I'd always get chocolate ice cream.
That little crack from which obviously they get you with in the adverts, but the Magnum. Yeah, this isn't an advert for Magnum.
The chocolate on the Magnum is thicker than all of the other copycats that do that style of chocolate.
Yes, it's too brittle on the others,
Too brittle. Like the choc ice is obviously like the wafer thin, and I'm like, you're not giving me good chocolate here. Right. So I like that the Magnum is like, we're going to do the chocolate, we're going to do it properly, and it's going to be thick, and it's going to really like infuse into the ice cream. And then I like the almonds because it has texture and there's nuttiness in there.
When we used to go on family holidays, it was always like Magnums, but then I broke away and I was the first to have like Cornettos or Doves.
Yeah. I like a Snickers ice cream. That's so good.
Mars.
All Mars. I'll take either. I think the nuts and the Snickers really edge it for me, but I'll have either. They're brilliant.
When the heat waves in London the past few years, which is a sort of dark, pseudo adjacent climate change reference, but the studio manager would come round like a bringer of gifts, like a summer Santa, and just like throw choc ices around and be like Biscoff ice cream. Yeah. Just do like an ice cream run.
I love on our outdoor shoots, someone will just get a box of Twisters and hand them out during lunch.
Now, is Twister a lolly? Is that technically
a lolly? It's got ice cream on it.
Because I don't do lollies. I do ice creams.
It's a hybrid. The Twister's a hybrid. The Twister is a sorbet with ice cream swirled throughout.
That does sound interesting. Is that the green and white swirl?
You've had a Twister, right? You're talking like you haven't had a Twister.
I don't have lollies, so I don't.
You've not had a Twister?
No, I don't think I've eaten. And neither have I had a Solero.
You've not had it. Oh, George, Soleros are fantastic.
Didn't do lollies. Lollies and sweets, not for me. Ice cream and chocolate, different. You understand?
A hard line.
It's like it's not even one I've just. That's the environment I grew up in.
Because George, we're grown ups. We can
do
afford
whatever
ice
we
cream.
want, yeah.
We could for next week. We could have ice cream. Should we get? Well, it's quite a lot of ice cream to eat in one day. Should we get? Okay, I think you'd love a Solero.
Define a Solero again? What is it?
Ice cream. So like a Magnum.
Yeah.
But instead of, it says vanilla ice cream with mango infused in the middle, but instead of chocolate, it's like a mango coulis around the outside. It's delicious.
Like mochi.
You'd love it. Not like the mochi is like
not
a
the
gelato.
consistency.
Yeah. So really premium ice cream with a bit of mango rippled throughout, and then like a frozen mango coulis on the outside.
That does sound good.
It's great. Do you know what? I'll get you some Soleros because I think you'd love it.
Are you going to have some as well?
Cool. Yeah.
I don't eat them on my own.
I'm just going to buy you ice cream. But yeah, we will. I usually have a Twister. Twister's so refreshing.
What's better?
The nostalgia is the Twister. The Solero is more of a grown-up option.
I could just give you a spontaneous game right now. It's like Twister or Solero.
That's tough. I'm going to have to go Twister for the nostalgia.
No,
Twisters are more of a fun eating experience.
Twister or a flake, 99 flake.
Twister.
Soft serve. You take the Twister over the soft serve?
I have a huge respect for the soft serve. I'd never go for it. If someone
you said you love soft serve 2 minutes ago. You were like, I love soft serve.
I do like it.
But
it doesn't mean I go for it.
Whoa.
Hey, there's a different thing. George, if you surprised me with a soft serve, if I was meeting you in town, oh my God, you're my hero. Yeah. What a great idea. It's in the city. Sugar, I'm perked up. But if you said, James, should we get ice cream? What are you going to get? I actually probably wouldn't go for the soft serve.
Huh.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not my choice. It's like, it's the default. It's classic. It's legendary. It deserves its place.
Do you do lollies?
I love lollies, yeah.
Do you go for like the Ribena ones in the tube?
I prefer a strawberry Calippo if you can find it. They don't do them in the UK.
A Calippo?
Oh, are you kidding me?
That's also a lolly in a tube, isn't it?
It's the lolly in the tube,
yeah. I wasn't really allowed those when I was a kid, yeah.
What's wrong with those?
James, we've talked about my sugar.
Right,
yeah.
but on a Magnum is also filled with sugar.
Absolutely, but there's something a bit more substantial about a dairy-based sugar.
Like a sweet tea.
There isn't logic to it, really, but like I think there is just, if you were to tier them of like the real hard what's bad for you stuff, it's like
I might check with your mum. I'm like, can George have a Solero? She's like, no, give him a Solero. Meanwhile, you're just bouncing off the wall.
Did you used to have that when you were a kid? Like your parents would be like, and is he allowed so and so?
Yeah.
Can George have this? Because like no Sunny D for George.
So the dairy sort of cut the sort of.
I don't know. But also we're talking about holidays where like the rules were lax. So like on holidays, and every so often I'd be allowed to have the Ribena. And also, we're talking about holidays, which were a bit more lax. So, like, you know, and I did have times when I have the Ribena thingy, but because I didn't have it much when I was a kid, I do have like a fondness, an allure, a temptation by things like Ribena, fruit shoot.
And I love that to this day, like, you still respect the rules from when you were younger. It's like you can just go and get that ice cream, but you're like, no, I don't think I'm worried that I might.
It's like with dairy ice cream and dairy chocolate, which is other people would just call chocolate.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's got predominantly dairy and that comes from a cow. I know what that is. Whereas sweets, lollies, it's all artificial. It's all sugar. It's all made in a lab. You know, I know there's still E numbers and crap in ice cream and chocolate, but in my head, that's not as bad.
You're like the people who only do like drugs that are green, like shrooms and weed, whereas you don't do the synthetic stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you feel about ice cream.
Anyway,
fantastic. I mean, yeah, you know what? We should get some Soleros because we deserve it. Maybe after double takes, we film that outside.
Max, thank you very much for that email about the Cornetto Trilogy. That wraps up our emails for today. Lots of hot takes today, guys. Many more to come in the weeks to follow. We haven't forgotten your hot takes if you've sent them in via DM or email. We will get to them in the future. In fact, it's actually quite comforting to have all of your responses because we know there's such a rich cornucopia of opinions out there that we can just dig into.
People receiving things very differently. I do like it. And also, if you send an email with a review of a film that's out, for example, start sending us your Thunderbolts ones if you've seen ones, because that'll be coming soon. Throw in a little hot take at the end.
Yeah.
It's always nice to see them.
A little sizzle.
Lovely. George, as always, Pulp Kitchen ends
with a game.
I have a new game for you today, George. It's kind of a spin-off on other stuff we do, but using different skills. George, actors, they appear in films, we know. And some of these actors we're about to guess are supporting actors in many films. I'm going to ask the question, George, if I were to give you 3 of their films. Could you tell me the common denominator? George, This is common denominators. You have to guess the common denominator from the 3 films. So, for example, if I was to say, this would be easy, Fight Club, Seven, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the common denominator would be...
Brad Pitt.
There you go. Right, are you ready to play the game?
Okay.
Let's play common denominators. You have to guess the actor who's in all of these films. Don't Worry, Darling, Wonder Woman, Horrible Bosses 2.
Chris Pine.
Yes, correct. That is the common denominator. Okay. Margin Call, Iron Man 2, The Da Vinci Code.
Paul Bettany.
Yes, very well done. He is the common denominator. Ready? Glass Onion, Step Brothers, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Can you guess the common denominator?
So it's not Kate Hudson.
No.
Oh,
Step Brothers.
Step Brothers. Catherine Hahn.
Yes, very well done. She's the common denominator. Right. Tropic Thunder, Trainwreck, Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh, they're so similar. They're all from the same stable. Get me again?
Tropic Thunder, Trainwreck, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. It's Bill Hader. Right. Phone Booth, Pompeii, The Sentinel.
What's The Sentinel? What is that? What movie is that?
It's a film.
Who's in it? Pompeii and Phone Booth, but it's not Kit Harington. Kiefer Sutherland.
Yes, very well done. Right. Up in the Air, Spider-Man 2, and Juno.
Jason Bateman?
No.
Juno. Male?
Yes.
Not Michael Cera?
No.
Oh, it's not
Spider-Man?
Alfred Molina?
No. J.K. Simmons. The Hunger Games Catching Fire, A Single Man, and The Big Lebowski.
Not Woody Harrelson. It's
No.
not Jeffrey Wright. It's
No.
not Lenny Kravitz.
It's a woman.
Julianne Moore.
Yes, well done. She's the common denominator. Arrival, Panic Room, Southpaw. He's a great supporting actor.
Michael Stuhlbarg.
No.
Arrival. Forrest Whitaker.
Yes, yes. Well done. You found most of the common denominators. That was common denominators. I've been your host, James Briefel, and today's contestant was George.
Hey. Do I win a check?
I think you probably have to get all of them to win a check. Maybe you get like a little keychain. Yeah, Solero for next week. That was common denominators.
I like that very much. It is hard. Like
yeah, oh my
God.
Also,
Tropic Thunder only seen once, so I don't remember Bill Hader being in it.
So that's one, probably the hardest one, because he's a main role in Trainwreck, which I offered up, but he's a small role in Tropic Thunder, and in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, he only appears on Skype for a couple of scenes, but he's very funny in it. And Bill Hader does a lot of supporting work.
I love him, Bill Hader.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Is that all we have time for today?
That is all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Pulp Kitchen. We appreciate you spending your time with us. Don't forget, we post new episodes of this podcast every single Wednesday.
And stay tuned for Double Take, our exclusive Patreon show, which we do at the end of the week. We're wrapping up all of this week's film news, which will, more film news still to come because it's only Tuesday. But like I mentioned earlier, the Smashing Machine trailer with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, some casting news for Narnia. But until then, keep an eye and do follow us on social media, which most of you do anyway, but continue to do that because we post content we don't post here, like Film Bites, which we have amazing guests on. We just had director Paul Feig, director of Bridesmaids. He's a great guest. Got lots of videos with him, many more guests to come, and we really appreciate your support on there as well. If you can share our videos, like our videos, send them to friends.
Tell some friends about the show as well. Yeah. Listen to the podcast. So, you listen to any good podcast?
Yeah.
Kitchen.
Yeah, you have. And if people say, I'm thinking about going to see Sin as well, check out the Pulp Kitchen review. Or I've seen Sinners, go check out the Pulp Kitchen review. Anyway, we'll be back next week, guys, with hopefully a review. Thunderbolts.
See you guys. Take care, guys. Bye. Thanks so much.